My name is Adam Gehring. I'm the compositing supervisor at Legend 3D. And what Legend 3D is a 2D to 3D conversion studio. And we use mocha almost exclusively for our pipeline to generate rotos, clean plates, and tracks. And one of the reasons that we use it is because it gives us fidelity of data to work with, and it does, a good portion of the heavy lifting. We don't do solely 2D to 3D conversion. We've branched out recently into doing native stereo visual effects compositing. And recently we worked on Spiderman. We did do some 2D to 3D conversion on that, but most of the bulk of work that we did was with native stereo fixes. So this is one of the shots we worked on. As you can see, there's a camera pan. There's a lot of 3D parallax going on with the sewer system. We had to deliver very precise 3D rotos. And what, by the way, by the meaning of precise, not only for the rotos and the clean plates, I mean that they would start differencing things, and if there was anything off with the edge, they would kick it back to us. And through the progress of shots like these, we kind of got a feel for what the client wanted, which was everything. And as you can see with this shot, there's a lot going on. It seems simple. There's not a lot as far as like a lot of people going on, but it's a perfect demonstration of what mocha can do with this. As you can see, the roto that we did on it ended up being in stereo. And when you're looking at something like this in stereo on a monitor or a television, some of those discrepancies wouldn't be that big. But when you look at it on a 40-foot movie screen, that 0.01% turns into 1% of the viewer's field of view, and you can see things that were minor now become a little bit more major. And when we're feeding them elements in a compositing pipeline, they have to be right on because they want things to move as smoothly as possible, and that's what they're paying us to do, is give them things that they can give to their compositors that they can then put into their stereo pipeline that they don't have to tweak. The problem with this is that to get that level of perfection, it takes a lot of manual work, and what we put together was as far as using Nuke or some other roto program, we would have to do a lot of manual tracking, a lot of hand keyframe animating for the translation and rotation of a lot of things. We would have to hand tweak a lot of the splines. Well, when you're in mocha, which is right here somewhere, there it is, it takes a lot of that heavy lifting off your hands. And it does an exceptional job at tracking pixels. Now, it's built as a planar tracker, and we use it a lot for that, for getting not only tracking data, but also for removals. One of the things that it can also do is it does a really good job, unlike a lot of tracking or roto softwares, of analyzing the pixel data and really intelligently analyzing those patterns so it sticks with it. If I was in Nuke in this shot, and we actually had the problem with this in their 3D camera package, because we needed to get a 3D camera track of this at some point, and we were using 2.5, so 3 actually has a camera tracker in it. So I'll go over that a little bit later. But when we did a 3D camera track of this with all the lighting changes and the waters and the highlights, it was almost impossible to lock down this ground plane down here. And as you saw in the video, the roto that was in here was also generated using tracking data from mocha and also splines from mocha. A lot of this lighting change in here, if we, for instance, go in here and take a look at that. So what I've done is find an area, and just like any other roto package, but unlike other roto packages, even with the lighting changes and the subtle gradations on that floor and any water that's flowing over the top of it, it's going to stick to it really well. If I just hit track forward, as this goes on, it's going to track the edge of that, and that tracking data is going to be really solid. And when we get down to the edge of the screen, you'll see that most tracking software would fall apart once it started to lose some of the data. But mocha actually analyzes the data that you're giving it. So it doesn't matter if it's 100% of the shape that I've defined or 10% of the shape that I've defined. As long as it has those pixels to analyze, it's still going to say, okay, it's basically going to ignore anything outside of the frame of the picture. At this point, most softwares would have started to go crazy, your track's going to go all over the place, but you'll see that it gets way down there. So I know that at some point this is going to, go off screen. So I can actually add a shape to that and give Mocha some more data to go along with. So what I've done here is I've added a shape with an add shape, and it's basically saying, okay, I'm losing this pixel information over here, but I've given another area to define, and because the camera motion is the same for both of those areas, it's going to look at it as if it's the same track. So I can just continue to track forward. And you can see this is blurred in here. I've got camera motion blur, but there's enough variance in there that Mocha has no problem with. And to get another program to track that stuff would be nigh impossible, or I'd have to go do a lot of manual tweaking, a lot of manual animation. And what that does for me, in this pipeline specifically, is it gives me really solid tracks. And if I scroll back here, you can see that this shape down in the lower left-hand corner, it's just as solid as it was when it was on screen, because it looks at these two as the same function. It doesn't look at them as two different tracks, it looks at them as the same track. And you can look at that by turning on this up here, which is basically attached to the original roto that I made, but you can see that it's pretty unwavering, and the only warping that we have is with the camera, is the camera warps the image. And what is for me in roto, and the fidelity that we had to get out of these rotos, it expanded a lot of things for us in our pipeline. One of the things is not everybody is going to be an expert Mocha user. Not everybody's going to be an expert roto person. Not everybody's going to be a perfect animator. And for me, in compositing and visual effects, knowing how to interpolate things over motion, because the images that we're working with are moving, it all goes back to animation. And with roto, you usually have translation, rotation. You have the camera move that affects the images, and when I track things in Mocha, it gives me Mocha data to be able to take a lot of that out. So I can break apart my pipeline. I can have somebody work in Mocha and generate a lot of prep comp data that I can feed to another artist. And one of the workflows that we had with here was we would do our tracking in Mocha. We would also do our roto in Mocha. Because with this track, I can actually attach any of these rotos up here on the wall to this track, because it's still got the pan and the camera motion into it. So one of the things that they recommend you do is I could use this roto shape. Another thing to note is that this roto shape is not connected to the track, and this box is not the tracking data. This is the data that when I export out of Mocha would get put as tracking data. And basically, this is your four-corner pen. The track is actually happening underneath all of this. So they separate out the data, which is one of the things that I took note of, and I kind of put that in the pipeline. And the workflow for this was doing our tracks in Mocha, doing our shapes in Mocha, but we also had to deliver nuke scripts back to the client. So I couldn't very well take a roto shape that was exported out of Mocha into Nuke and send that to the client, because it compresses all of the data, and it takes all of the tracking information and all of the shape information and all the point information and puts it into one roto node. Well, that's great if you're finishing everything off, but to make everything and all of the data tweakable on Sony ImageWorks side, when we were sending it, we broke out the track separate from the roto shape, and then we linked them back in Nuke. So that way we have the really clean functionality. For those of you who've done like rigging or any kind of visual effects, breaking out that data and keeping it separate, keeping the rotation different from the translation of the character and things like that, kind of applies here. And I try to apply that in a lot of the workflow that I do in visual effects for compositing, especially in terms of animation like this.
I think pretty much every Spidey shot, the rotos were done in Mocha.
That's awesome.
Yeah, very few. Once our artists figured out the ease at which Mocha gets your job done, they didn't go back to Nuke or After Effects. Spider-Man was a Nuke exclusive show, because that's what the client was working in as far as delivery. But Mocha allowed for us to have a non-destructive workflow that didn't break any assets or have any baked-in information. It was all editable and non-destructive. So that's why we chose Mocha. At Legend, we do start with the roto process. Some VFX houses will start with a clean plate, and you can pull a difference sometimes and get a fairly decent mat. With the expectations that the client was asking for, we felt it was necessary to start with the rotos to get a perfectly articulate roto, so that when we did our removes, we'd be preserving as much of the source as possible. I'm going to jump to Nuke just to show you kind of the results it gave me. And this is literally the results out of that same project file. There's been no modifications to it. Sometimes it'll give you exactly what you need, and you literally need to just degrain the shot and regrain it, and you're ready to go. Other times it'll just provide patches for you, and you'll have to do multiple composites for each individual plane in your shot. As you can see here, where I've held out, it's not doing a great job because I don't have a separate tracking information for this sewer here. But it's fully removed these wires. It's fully removed Spiderman here. I did not create a separate plane for this area over here or above, but did a pretty amazing job with very little preparation and very little post work. You can see that we do have a little bit of an offset here from the wire, which has to do with my track. The remove is only as good as your track and your preparation. It's kind of like James Earl Jones says in Conan the Barbarian, what is steel compared to the hand that wields it? The amount of work you put into it is going to give you, a better track, obviously. But this is a pretty quick preparation here. You do want to create separate planes for each area that you do want to have removed. You can't just create one big bounding box and say, I want to remove the entire scene behind Spidey, and then just hope that Mocha kind of figures it out. There are situations where that does work, where you have something going over a body of water, and you want to just track the shot and create a garbage mat for the airplane or whatever's going over the body of water, and do your remove. It will give you some choppy results on the waves if they are moving. One awesome feature that Mocha does have is the illumination model option, which if you do change this to interpolate, what it's going to do is it's going to figure out the lighting changes that are going on around the object that you are moving. And I found that even though I don't believe it was created for that, it does an amazing job with stuff like fluid motion of water, and just kind of interpolates the movement around it, the lighting around it, and just blends it. Sometimes you can get away with some awesome clean plates with minimal work just by clicking the interpolate in the illumination model. But once again, I do want to reiterate that this is not an easy button. There is preparation that goes into this, and I mean, you can see the amount of work that's going on behind Spidey in order to get the results I did get. But this process and the level of precision that the client was needing for the show was not going to be feasible without Mocha. We had tight deadlines, and we could literally set it and forget it sometimes. We could prep our shot, do the render, and move on to the next shot while this one's rendering, and then go back to it when your render's done and composite the shot and do all the manual stereo process. It's pretty amazing.
They are solutions for our 2D prep comp needs, alphas, clean plates, removes, tracking data. The planar tracker in this program is just ridiculously awesome. And if you haven't had a chance to play with it, 5 minutes in and you're going to be sold. We also use Mocha inside our spline warping process to track different parts. I've got a little quick video for that guy as well. So what we were able to do, set up our spline warp in Nuke just like you normally would. We were able to track these individual pieces of Spider-Man inside Mocha and then just attach those tracks to the grid warp. And it really allows for a fluid movement of the patch without having too much work to do, Skip ahead here. I don't know if it shows. There we go. And you can see how well it's able to stick exactly with those points. And then we just replace our grid here, our roto grid, with whatever image we needed. We could put on the Mocha logo. Make Mary happy.
How I usually do mine.
Yeah.
you guys are doing
Shameless
work.
plugging for Mocha.
Uh-huh.
So we could have put Mocha on the side of his arm here like a nice little tattoo, and then had it move along with his movement on each one of these points. So definitely a good solution to 2D, CP, and alpha, especially if you're doing anything where you're going to have to be particular to the client's original frame. The move closer to the source, the better off you're going to be, and Mocha is going to hit it very well every time. Just as a quick reminder to you guys too, Legends hiring. So if you want to take a look at our webpage at some of the positions that we have available, and it might be a good fit. Come do some fun things, work on new movies. All right, thank you guys very much.